Texas, 1939. A small black boy named Bernard sets up his shoeshine stall in a specific location. Not anywhere, not where the foot traffic is highest, but directly in front of the bank. This is deliberate. The customers who will sit in his chair are wealthy white men, and wealthy white men talk about financial matters while they wait. Bernard works slowly. He is not slow because he is bad at shining shoes. He is slow because he is listening. Every conversation he overhears gets written into a notebook after the customer leaves. At an age when other children are playing, Bernard is building a private education in finance from the conversations of men who would never agree to teach him anything directly. He already knows what he wants to be. He wants to be a banker. His father tells him this is impossible. Texas in 1939 does not leave much room for discussion on this point. The discrimination is severe and systematic and has the full weight of the social order behind it. Bernard listens to his father and absorbs the love in what is being said, which is essentially, I do not want you to be destroyed by hoping for something that will not be allowed. Bernard's eyes say something different in return. 15 years pass. Bernard is a grown man with a wife named Eunice and children, and he has moved to Los Angeles. The discrimination here is real, but not as brutal as what he grew up inside. He decides this is the place to build what he intends to build. The family begins in a dilapidated utility room in a relative's house. Bernard promises Eunice they will move out of it soon. He means this. He starts as a real estate agent and begins moving through the city with a particular quality of attention. He is looking at everything but thinking about very specific things. What he observes is this. The black community in Los Angeles is overcrowded. They are living on top of each other in areas that cannot absorb the population. Meanwhile, white neighborhoods have significant vacancy. Black residents have both the rental need and the financial capacity to fill those spaces. There is no market connecting these two facts. That gap is a business opportunity. He locates a white-owned apartment building with weeds at the door and obvious neglect across its exterior. Most people looking at this building see a failing property. Bernard sees the one thing that matters to him. Its location sits adjacent to the black residential area. He goes to the owner and makes a specific proposal. You have only rented out half the building, he tells the man. Sell it to me. I will give you $30,000 now and $5,000 more when I have rented out every room. The owner is interested in the thinking but not interested in the risk. He declines. As Bernard turns to leave, he notices the calendar on the wall. It was issued by a local bank manager. He files this away. He says goodbye and walks directly to the bank. At the bank, the manager's secretary looks at Bernard and decides he does not deserve to reach the manager's office. Bernard waits. He waits for hours. When the manager comes out, Bernard steps into his path and makes his case. I know one of your major clients, and what I am doing will benefit him. I am asking for a loan. The manager refuses without pausing to consider it. That night, the owner of the building calls Bernard. Someone has been using his name trying to secure a loan. Bernard apologizes and waits for the anger. It does not come. The owner tells him that he finds this impressive rather than offensive. A man who will not give up until his goal is achieved is someone worth backing. He agrees to guarantee the loan. Bernard gets the money and buys the building. When he arrives to begin renovations, an elderly white woman returning from shopping demands to know what a black man is doing at her door. He answers calmly that he is renovating the building. She tells him workers should be careful. He tells her calmly that she does not need to worry. It is his building, and he intends to take good care of it. She goes inside and calls the police. The officers arrive and tell Bernard they have received a report that he is impersonating the owner of the property. He reaches into his pocket and produces the real estate certificate. He had anticipated this and prepared in advance. The officers look at it, look at each other, and leave in visible frustration. When Bernard returns that evening, the same woman tells him to leave because the renovation hours are over. He informs her just as calmly as every other time that he is not the renovation worker. He is the owner. She processes this and moves out of the building within days, unwilling to share a building with a black landlord. Bernard immediately rents her unit to a black tenant. As he predicted, the market is there. The building fills quickly. He makes the agreed follow-up payment to the former owner, who is by now thoroughly impressed. They enter into a formal partnership. Bernard identifies the properties. The former owner negotiates and signs the contracts. White sellers do not realize they are doing business with a black man. The revenue is split. The arrangement is clean and effective and very profitable. Bernard moves his family out of the utility room and into a mansion. He has operated through the entire period without retaliating against any of the discrimination he encountered. This is not passivity, it is strategy. He understands that punching back puts him inside someone else's rules. His rules are rational, economic, and built around maximum return. These rules cannot be as easily rigged against him as the legal and social ones can. Then the former owner dies. His equity passes to his wife, who holds no fondness for the arrangement. She offers to buy Bernard's shares at a price that insults him and makes clear that if he disagrees, she will take him to court. In 1950s America, in a lawsuit between a white widow and a black man, the outcome is not a mystery. Bernard decides to fight it anyway. He needs someone to testify to the existence of their cooperative relationship. The bank manager is the obvious candidate. But the manager has already been approached by the widow and refuses to engage with Bernard again. Bernard walks into the bank and stands there looking around. The building presents itself as orderly and professional. He can see beneath that surface to what it actually is: a systematically discriminatory institution that uses the appearance of formality to close its doors to people who look like him. He looks at the building and an idea begins to form that is either genius or madness, and Bernard does not tend to confuse the two. He finds a man named Joe, another black real estate developer in Los Angeles, and tells him his plan. He wants to buy the building that houses 4 banks, the very banks that have refused him repeatedly. Joe initially responds as anyone rational would. This is downtown Los Angeles. The land value is extraordinary. No black person has ever purchased property at that level, and the idea is absurd. Then Bernard explains the logic, and Joe goes quiet. Own the building, and the banks inside it become your tenants. Your tenants cannot refuse you loans. Your tenants will share market intelligence with you because you are their landlord. Their services, which were previously closed to you by discrimination, become operationally necessary to extend to you. The discrimination collapses under the weight of the commercial relationship. Joe thinks about this for a long time and concludes that Bernard is not delusional. He is one of the most effective strategic thinkers Joe has ever encountered. He agrees to the plan. They need a white man to handle the negotiations. They both know this without sentiment. Bernard already has someone in mind: Matt, an honest and capable man who has been helping him with renovation work. Matt is ambitious but still developing. Bernard and Joe invest in him deliberately. They teach him golf, social manner appropriate to boardrooms, mathematical analysis, and real estate valuation. They prepare him as specifically as Bernard once prepared himself by listening at the shoeshine stand. Matt responds exactly as they hoped. He becomes comfortable in rooms that would have been closed to Bernard and Joe regardless of their capability. Joe arranges for Matt to meet the owner of the bank building at a golf club, presenting it as a natural encounter. The conversation goes well enough that a formal negotiation becomes possible. Bernard prepares Matt for every number that could arise. He counts the lights on in the building after dark to determine vacancy rates. He analyzes the annual revenue and operating costs to derive a precise valuation. He anticipates every figure the building's owner might deploy and prepares a counter for each one. Matt memorizes all of it. When the negotiation takes place, the owner and his accountant encounter a young man who cannot be bluffed, who knows their numbers as well as they do, and responds to every inflated claim with the exact correct figure. They are convinced they are dealing with a mathematical prodigy. A building initially valued at over $2.4 million is acquired for $1.56 million. From that point on, when Bernard enters or exits the building, the president of every bank inside comes out to greet him. The manager who refused him a loan without pausing to think about it stands there now in the lobby. The building's ownership has inverted the entire power relationship without a single confrontation. With the banking community now operating in their favor, Bernard and Joe expand rapidly. They begin breaking through the zoning lines that have kept black residents segregated in Los Angeles. Black families move into white neighborhoods. The impact on the city's residential geography is significant enough that Bernard and Joe are eventually received by the vice president. In 1963, Bernard takes his family back to Texas to visit his father. His father is proud in the quiet way of a man who did not believe this was possible and has had to revise everything he thought he knew about what was possible. The next day, Bernard walks through town with his son. Without particularly intending to, they end up in front of the bank where Bernard used to shine shoes. A young boy is working a similar stall nearby. Bernard watches him and notices the boy will only work on the shoes of white people. He has already absorbed the lesson that his value and his market are defined by race. Something shifts in Bernard. The responsibility he feels toward his community sharpens into a specific intention. He is going back to Texas to change what is available to the people who were left here. He goes to Joe and tells him they should buy the mainland bank in Texas. Joe responds as he always does when Bernard proposes something that initially sounds impossible. He says Bernard has lost his mind, takes a breath, listens to the reasoning, and eventually agrees. They recruit Matt again. Matt meets with the bank's owners, the Florences, Sr. and Jr. Sr. sells. Florence Jr. has suspicions but cannot prevent the sale. The deal is completed. Bernard begins approving loans for black residents who have never had access to banking services. This is the point, not profit from this particular bank, but access. He is building the infrastructure of opportunity that was denied to the people he grew up alongside. Things proceed well until Florence Jr. begins investigating the loan portfolio. He follows Matt to a meeting with Bernard and Joe, confronts them with their arrangement, and arrives with a letter from the U.S. Treasury Department stating that the bank's operations will be examined within a month. Matt suggests a solution: acquire another bank and move the problematic loans there. They identify the Bank of Marlon Moore as the target. Bernard is reluctant to let Matt run it independently, but agrees that Eunice will oversee him. Matt gets his bank. The following period produces a crisis. Matt, moving quickly and cutting corners, signs loan contracts with a lawyer recommended by Florence Jr. Florence has used this access to quietly insert problem loans into the portfolio. When federal bank examiners arrive at Marlon and discover the critical issues, Bernard learns for the first time what has happened. Matt, in his rush and inexperience, missed the trap that Florence set through the very lawyer he recommended. Bernard and Joe conclude that the rational decision is to walk away from Marlon. Matt refuses to accept this and acts without consulting his partners. Joe finds out and they confront Matt at Mainland Bank, while Florence watches from across the room with satisfaction. Federal examiners move to revoke Mainland Bank's license to operate. As Bernard and Joe leave the building, FBI agents arrest them. Bernard pushes back. It achieves nothing. Their lawyer later tells them the case has been tangled with the racial politics of the moment. A senator named Mullen approaches Matt and offers him freedom in exchange for testimony against his former partners. Matt sits with this overnight and makes a phone call. The following day, he testifies against Bernard and Joe at the Senate hearing. Bernard is also brought before Mullen and offered a choice: confirm Matt's testimony and accept an immunity deal, or say whatever he wants and go to prison. Bernard chooses to say what he has been holding for years. He speaks about racial discrimination, about the systemic, deliberate, architectural exclusion of black Americans from the financial structures that build wealth across generations. He says it in the room where it matters, in front of the people responsible for maintaining it. Then he goes to federal prison. Their fortunes are decimated. Florence Jr. purchases the Mainland Bank for a fraction of what Bernard and Joe paid. Matt is never charged. Bernard and Joe serve their sentences and are released. When they emerge, Eunice notices something strange. They seem content. Not resigned, not broken, content. Joe explains that they have properties sitting next to each other in the Bahamas. Eunice asks Bernard how this is possible, given everything that was seized. The phone call Matt made the night before his testimony, that was to Bernard. Matt told him what Mullen was offering and apologized. Bernard asked him for one favor in return. Before the government could reach their assets, Matt had helped move specific properties beyond reach. Bernard knew the deal was lost. He saved what he could through the only person in a position to help him. The film ends with a note. Bernard and Joe's residential properties in Los Angeles were instrumental to the desegregation of housing in the city, and somewhere in the Bahamas, 2 mansions sit next to each other, owned by 2 men who were sent to prison for trying to let black families buy houses.